Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have the impressive Connie Smith. We're going to be discussing her amazing book, Great Gobs of Goose Grease. I'll say that 5 times fast. I love that title, and I tell you, people, it is so much more than just a catchy title, okay? First and foremost, you got to head on over to Amazon and Barnes & Noble to pick up copies yourself, and I'm going to tell you why you need to do that in just a few moments. But before we go any further, let me point out that Connie was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best advertising firms in the business. And people, you already know I'm talking about Author Reputation Press. So listen to me. For my writers out there listening in currently, if you have gone through your process, you've put in countless hours to creating your masterpiece, and now you find yourself in a precarious position because, well, now you need help moving the book you just finished writing. Well, I'm going to give you some fantastic advice. Contact ARP. They're one of the best in the business to do it, and frankly, people, this is exactly what they specialize in. Head on over to authorreputationpress.com today and gather all of the ways that their fantastic team is going to help expand your creative endeavors. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Connie here on the line. Now, as I mentioned, her book is so much more than a catchy title, okay? It's going to be educational, it's going to be self-help, and it's going to revolve around her personal battle and recovery with dealing with a stroke. Now, this is something that I find to be so valuable, not only because we're going to gather her perspective, her journey, but people, we know, unfortunately so, having a stroke is something that is pretty common. A lot of people deal with it. A lot of people either A, have had one themselves, will have one in their lifetime, or someone in their circle has. Now, because of the fact that it is so common, don't you think we should be prepared to deal with it if and when it happens? Now, of course, fingers crossed, hopefully you are never struck with that burden. Hopefully that is something you never have to deal with. But again, I think you should be prepared, just in case. And this book is a remarkable resource for that reason, precisely. Connie is a breath of fresh air, an absolute embodiment of a person of distinction, and we are delighted to have her here with us. And at the end of the day, it's her book. She's written it. It's her life. She's lived it. And she's going to be able to articulate everything much better than I ever could. So do me a favor. Sit back, strap in, have your notebooks ready, because this is about to be an education for all of us, myself included. Connie, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Benji.
Wonderful. Well, Connie, listen, it is a true delight and honestly, a real pleasure to have you here with us. I think what you're doing is special and needed for so many reasons, a number of which I've already mentioned during my intro. And listen, I'm not going to keep our listening audience waiting anymore. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Because this is a memoir of sorts, we're going to learn a little bit about you as well as your story. So, Great Gobs of Goose Grease. Tell us a little bit more about it.
The book I wrote was Great Gobs of Goose Grease, and my mother used to say Great Gobs of Goose Grease when she was surprised. She's the reason that I wrote that, and it made me really happy because she was already dead, and it's my way to include her. Anyway, I had a stroke back in 2000, and it was pretty bad when I was in the hospital for 5 weeks and then rehab for 5 weeks. And I went through an awful lot, and they gave me a shot so I wouldn't remember what I'd gone through because it wasn't very nice.
Wow.
Anyway, my children, I have an identical twin sister, and she wrote something. She wrote down every night what major thing had happened to me. So I have that record, which is, I think, the best. But after I come home, little stickies, I would write some of them I couldn't read because my writing was so bad. It got better and better and better. I'm not great now, but it's a lot better than it used to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, I would write on stickies what happened that day, what important thing, how I was feeling. And at the very end, I gathered up all that stuff and wrote the book.
Connie, thank you very much for articulating that. And listen, I think so much of where the power of your book lies, at least for me, and I'm sure so many others can relate, is it's not just your story and your recovery process from a stroke. Of course, that it is, but it also couples the support system that was around you, your sister, as you had mentioned, your children. And I think a lot of times when we're talking about stroke patients, we examine it from the patient's perspective, but we're not really understanding what the circle around that patient has to go through as well. And I think it's very poignant that you bring that up and that it's showcased in your book. So my next question for you, Connie, why did you feel compelled or inspired to write this book?
I can't tell you for positive, but I think somebody suggested I write down every day so that over time I could see the progress. And that's kind of why I did it. After I had the stroke, I had a Cheerios in my eye, that with my left eye only, that was dead. And with both my eyes, I could see just fine. But if I just opened my left eye, I had this dead Cheerios in it. And wow. I had it in 2000, and so it's a long time ago. My eye is probably 85-90% better. So things get better little by little.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, Connie, I think that's a great point and really symbolizes a wonderful reflection just on life, right? Of course, your book is about, as we've mentioned, your battle and having a stroke and the recovery process. But people, we can take that, read between the lines, and implement that message into life itself. Life is a process. There are going to be certain days that are better than others. There's going to be certain times where we have to go through a storm to reach the sun, right? To reach brighter days and better weather. So I think your book, from a macro perspective, has so much that it can offer about life itself. And this is why Amazon and Barnes & Noble are where you have to go. People, it's called Great Gobs of Goose Grease, and you need to pick it up. It needs to be on your shelf because it has so much wisdom that it's going to be able to implement into your individual lives. Connie, curiosity for myself with this next one. But throughout this entire process, specifically with writing this book, and I know as it seems, is what you were saying, this almost was a journal of sorts that you were keeping and writing yourself every single day that eventually accumulated into this book. But
right.
If there was a highlight, or maybe highlight has the wrong connotation, if there was a surprise throughout this process that arose, what would you say that was?
Well, I first of all, I wasn't surprised at all how good my family was to me. They've always been good to me, and not that that's a surprise. Maybe the surprise was I even had a stroke in the first place. I've always been a really healthy person. And this stroke thing, mine was kind of from a strange reason. Mine was a little bit different than a lot of people's stroke. I wasn't bad on one side or the other. Mine was right in the middle of my head, and I couldn't walk. I had to do 3 swallow studies before I was okay there. And anyway, and to this day, I'm still dizzy 24/7. I've got used to being dizzy, so I'm, pretty good. But anyway, I do one thing I just want to say. One of my daughters wrote something about my book, and they said, if we only had this book before my mom had a stroke, it would help us to see that maybe that you can be as bad as I was in medical coma for 3 weeks. Maybe you'll get better and better and better, and maybe have a really good life. And I really have a good life now. And it's just, it took an awful long time to get there.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, a great quote that you brought in. It's a wonderful segue to my next question, Connie. Connie, 2-part question here, but first and foremost, who would you say is your intended reader for your book, and what is the main message that you hope that they pull from it after completing it?
I think my intended readers are people whose family has had a stroke, and then they can see that some people have bad. I think mine was really bad, and they still can get better. That there's hope.
Right.
And your second question, I think the main message is just that little by little by little by little, you recover. And I know some people die. Some people have a horrible time, but a lot of times, eventually you recover. I have a friend that has her friend that had a stroke, and he was on one side. His damage was done just to one side, and he didn't do all his exercises, and he just didn't do. So he's not in good shape. I think I did everything I was supposed to, and maybe that's why I got better. I was in a wheelchair for the first many, just before I come home after 10 weeks. I was in a walker for a long time, and just so many little things, but eventually you might get better and be happy. And that's my whole reason for writing the book.
There you have it. Yeah, listen, people, I'm telling you, this is a narrative of hope. This is a narrative of inspiration. Because again, from a micro perspective, we're looking at her journey, and her journey is inspirational as it is. Given what she has gone through and where she's been able to go is incredible. But again, from a macro perspective, in looking at the education to be received, there is so much wisdom to be found within the confines of this book. I love it. Again, for me, I look at it from that step-by-step journey and how it reflects life. And listen, for me, I remember when I was younger, and it probably started as a defense mechanism, right? And it was one of those things where I was faking it till I made it. Okay, I'll be the first to admit it. But I remember at a very early age, I was aware of my perception on individual things and how a positive perception would take me so much further than a negative one. And I get it. Listen, it's not as easy as it is, right? It's not as easy as what I'm saying. So for the sake of an interview, I'm oversimplifying here. But people, I truly believe that no matter what the circumstance, no matter what the situation is that you are going through, taking it step by step, it's like that old adage, right? You don't build a wall all at once. You build a wall brick by brick. And you lay that individual brick down as perfectly as possible. And step by step, you get to that wall. You get to your final goal. But it's a process, man. It doesn't happen overnight. In this book, because of what she's talking about, because of the messages to be found, man, I tell you, this is much bigger than a literary creation. I mean, this is a lifestyle change. This is motivation in written form. I love it. And you know what I love even more? Is this is not the only book that Connie has written. Now, this is the main anchor for today's interview, so that's really the one that we wanted to focus on. But people, you're going to need to head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and check out 2 other books by Connie as well. One is called Never Yours, and then the other one is a children's narrative. It's called The Pie, and Oh, That Smell. Connie, I love your titles. I mean, they're so catchy. They're so fun.
Thank you.
This is something you need to add to your shelf. And listen, as we close out here, Connie, dealer's choice, because no one knows the books as well as you do. But pick another one of your titles, either Never Yours or The Pie, and Oh, That Smell. And tell us a little bit more about one of those books, please.
Well, The Pie, and Oh, That Smell is probably for like a 5, 6-year-old. Mm-hmm. And all it is it's giving you a little story where a mom gets really tired of baking because of the cleaning and the this and the that. And the dad and the daughter get together and try to somehow get her to change her feelings. And the little girl asks for a pie for her birthday, which they always did. And pretty soon she starts cooking again and liking it. And the dad and the daughter help clean up. And all those little things that help a person, little kids should help. The bottom line is if everybody helps, it's poof, it's done.
Yeah.
And it's just telling little kids you need to help your moms.
I love that.
That's it.
I love that. I love it. Connie, listen, it sounds very similar to my household, okay? Because my wife and I and our kids, we have a rule in our house, okay? If mom does the cooking, then dad does the cleaning. And vice versa. If dad does the cooking, then mom does the cleaning. And it's a partnership, right? We are very big on helping one another because at the end of the day, we're a unit, right? We are a team and we need to act as such. I love that message. I love this book.
Good.
And people, listen, there is so much more to be discovered. And I'd love to sit here and I'd love to discuss it with you. But now the responsibility falls on all of you. Okay, you know where you gotta go. It's time to pick up your copies and add these wonderful books to your shelf. And I'm gonna take it a step further. When you head on over to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and you purchase copies for yourself, purchase another copy as a gift for someone else, because this is truly a magnificent gift to add to someone else's shelf. So one last time, we're here on the line with Connie Smith. We finished discussing her amazing book, Great Gobs of Goose Grease, available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, but also check out her other titles, Never Yours, and lastly, The Pie, and Oh, That Smell. Head on over there today. Get lost in all of them. Connie, this has been a true pleasure, an absolute delight. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Benji, you have a voice that's just so soothing and, you've got a good voice for what you're doing. So thank you.